Hello again, fellas and ladies, and welcome back to the channel for another video about some stuff. So this video obviously is going to be a little different from how I usually do things, I guess. This isn't a commentary video about like a person or a movie or a thing, whatever. This is just kind of about where, I don't know, where I've been for a while and what's been going on with my life recently. Just kind of for transparency's sake. Now, I was originally going to start this video by saying, hey, I'm sorry I've been gone for so long. But then I realized, oh, actually I make monthly videos. It's not even really been that long. It just kind of feels that way. And I think maybe that's just because so much has happened since I last uploaded a video in December. So as some of you may know, if you follow me on Twitter, or I guess, you know, X, whatever, the everything app, the digital town square, at Batman Burchett, by the way, go ahead and follow me if you don't. On what I think was December 18th, I went to the hospital. So like 2 or 3 years ago, I can't really remember, I started having these really weird chest pains. It wasn't really like in my heart that I was feeling it. It was more down. It was kind of like right here. And at the time, it really sucked, but I just didn't have any insurance or have any money. Not that I have money now, but I at least have insurance now. And all the symptoms I was having, like having pains in the more upper abdominal area rather than the chest. I would have fever chills every night for the first week or so that went away if I took ibuprofen. But it was suggested to me by someone that I might have a hiatal hernia, which is basically just when part of the stomach kind of bulges up into your chest. And because it can push on other organs, it can cause those fever chills. And so from what I read, basically the only way to treat it was with like a omeprazole and ibuprofen. That was really it. And you can get surgery to fix it, obviously, but again, I didn't have insurance, so I couldn't really do that. So I just took omeprazole for 2 weeks, which is an acid reducer, and ibuprofen a couple times a day, and then it like basically went away. But a hiatal hernia is technically permanent. Like you will have flare-ups if you do something incorrectly. So a couple times a year or every like 3 or 4 months or so, I would get these flare-ups. And every time I would treat it with the exact same thing that I was using before, omeprazole and ibuprofen. And the flare-ups were never nearly as bad as the first time it ever happened. So I thought, well, I mean, I'm treating it. It's fine. I just have to be kind of careful with what I eat. And if I have these flare-ups, then just do what I've been doing. Except the first part of that, I didn't do. In fact, as time went on, my eating habits just got worse and worse. And then compound that on the fact that my job is basically sitting in a car for 12 hours a day. It did not help. But because the medication that I was taking was working to treat these flare-ups, I didn't really think a whole lot about it. I was more just kind of like, this is how life is now. I mean, this will happen every now and then. But about a year ago, I was having these flare-ups that would just happen way too frequently. I mean, it was happening like maybe monthly, and it was taking longer and longer for these flare-ups to go away. But because I'm, 26 years old, I don't know. I don't give a fuck, I guess. I don't know what to say. Like my physical health, I don't know what to say other than it's just not as important to me as like my mental health and well-being. I mean, it's much more concerning to me, I guess, that the world becomes too much and then I break psychologically than my tummy getting too big and hurting me. I don't know if that even makes any sense, but that's just how I've always felt, especially with more recent years with everything in the US just getting the way that it is and being horrible all the fucking time. It gets to be too much way too often, and I've really only got the energy to deal with either mental or physical. Like I can't really do both. Maybe I sound whiny and I don't really know if I'm even explaining it well, but it's just the way it feels. That's the way it's always felt in my head. Some people have the capacity to do both at the same time. I don't. But about a year ago when these flare-ups were getting worse, I decided I'm gonna start going to the gym. I'm gonna get a Planet Fitness membership. I'm gonna do what I can until I feel better, I guess, and I'm gonna see if that helps. And so once a week, sometimes twice a week, I would do 12 minutes on the treadmill going up to 3 miles an hour and going to a 3-point incline, 7 minutes on the elliptical at level 2, 45 dumbbell reps on each arm, 20 pounds, 35 leg presses at 160 pounds, 25 pull downs at 150 pounds, and 60 reps on the back stretcher at 160 pounds. And I would do that once a week, sometimes twice a week, and that was working for me. But the last time I went to the gym was, I think, like December 4th, maybe, because the next week when I was making my Whistling Diesel video, actually, I was getting really bad chest pains. And these chest pains were way worse than any of the previous times I've had them, even the first time that I had them. I mean, it was so bad that I could not sleep at all. Every night I was getting maybe a total of like 1 hour of sleep. And that was just because I was purely exhausted. But after like a week or maybe 4 days, I don't even really remember how long of taking this pain. I finally decided I'm gonna bite the bullet and I'm gonna go to the ER. Like, I cannot fucking take this anymore. I've gotten maybe a collective 7 hours of sleep this entire week. I'm literally, not even joking, not exaggerating, about to go fucking insane. So I scheduled a trip to urgent care. But then urgent care called me like a couple hours later, maybe even less than that, like an hour later, and told me, hey, your symptoms are too severe to come here. You need to go to the ER. So I went to the hospital, I went to the emergency room, and I was in the lobby for like an hour and a half. And by the way, there was just also this lady that was in the lobby who was like covered in rain for some reason, and I guess her cigarettes were all wet so she couldn't smoke them, and then she asked somebody else that was in the lobby for a cigarette and they gave it to her. Well, actually, she didn't ask somebody, she asked everybody and declared to the entire room that she was gonna pay for it, I swear. But then somebody gave her a cigarette and then she started fucking smoking it in the lobby. She was sitting in a wheelchair covered in blankets smoking a fucking cigarette, and I was already going crazy from having no sleep, having this constant pain, and sitting in this room for an hour and a half. I thought about doing to her what they did to Mr. Krabs and SpongeBob and just rolling her down a hill. I mean, in retrospect now, that's obviously crazy. She probably didn't have all of her mental faculties. She was in the hospital, but that's just a story I wanted to share. It drove me crazy. But then finally I was in the ER. I was in my own room in a bed that was extremely uncomfortable. And I let my parents know. I told my mom and she came. She drove like an hour and 45 minutes to get there. And I'm glad she did, even though what would happen next a couple hours later made me question my choice. So I'm in the ER. I'm dealing with all these nurses and doctors and they're running all these tests for hours and hours and hours. At first, they have no idea what's wrong with me. They're really dismissive at first. I tell them that I think that I have a hiatal hernia, but I don't know. And they tell me, well, that's not a reason to come to the ER. The doctor was kind of a dick. But then, like, I don't even remember how long, maybe 5 or 6 hours into my stay there. I really don't remember. Time is honestly kind of a blur for a lot of it. But a couple hours after me being in the ER and my mom being there, at some point she's sitting in the chair and then the nurses come and talk to me. And then while she's sitting in the chair, she just like falls to the floor. But she's still talking. She's still like conscious, but she's like, something's really wrong. I don't know what's wrong. This feeling has never happened to me before. I don't know what this is. And so they're like, do you want to get checked out? And she says yes, obviously, because this is a strange occurrence. So while they're like taking her off in a wheelchair while she's out in the hallway, I just hear a bunch of noises and see like 8 to 10 different nurses and like people in scrubs just running towards my mom. And I have no idea what the fuck is even going on. I'm hoping to God, like instantly, that it's not related to her. And of fucking course it is. So while I'm already going through all of this shit, my mom just randomly starts fucking dying out of nowhere. She has no like heart conditions, no fainting spells, nothing like this has literally ever happened before. And also like 5 minutes before this happened, I'm telling her like, at this point it's in the morning, so my antidepressants are starting to like wear off and I've missed my dose by then, and I get into like some depressive episode and I'm talking about how like nothing matters and the world is horrible, and I'm like trauma dumping all these horrible issues about how like everything sucks. And then 5 minutes later, my mom has no fucking pulse. And then the nurses come in and they're asking me for her ID and for her insurance card, and I don't live with my parents, so I don't know a lot of the stuff that they're even asking me. And they give me her purse and I'm like rooting through it, having a fucking full-blown panic attack because I'm only like half witnessing what's happening. All I see is people running, and then they're like, hey, your mom is blah blah. And at the same time, I've also got all this shit all over me. So I've got all these like EKG patches, and I've got IV, and I've got the arm pressure band and shit. And I'm like rooting through her purse, trying to find it, flipping through fucking receipts and tampons and shit. So I finally find all this shit, and I give everything to the nurse. I've got her ID, I've got her insurance card. I think it sure looks like an insurance card. It was like white and green, it had numbers on it. I don't fucking know. I still don't know if that was right. The nurse just said, I think that's it. And so I gave it to her. So for like half an hour, I'm sitting there like literally having a fucking panic attack. I can't fucking breathe. My chest hurts even worse. I mean, it's like, but then finally somebody comes in and they're like, okay, we got her back. She's alive. She's talking. She's a little confused, but she's, 2 doors down. If you want to go see her, we'll let you. So I do. I leave for like an hour. I call my dad, obviously. I tell him, hey, your wife's in the hospital now. And I should mention, by the way, this is all happening at like 2 in the morning. So my dad was like dead asleep. But then, he comes and he visits me, and then they tell me that I'm allowed to visit her. So we go and visit her. And all of a sudden, she's like completely fine. Her heart rate is normal. She's up. She's talking. To this day, they still have no idea why the fuck that happened. They ran all these tests on her. She was in a hospital room, not just the ER, in a hospital room for a couple days. But they do all these tests and they have no idea. They still don't. But anyway, let's put that, I guess, on the back burner for now. That feels weird to say, but but I'm in the ER and they tell me, hey, we're going to run a CAT scan. We're going to do some more tests, get an x-ray and all this stuff. We want to get you set up in a room, but we don't have any available. This was on either December 18th or I think 19th, because I went in the night of the 18th. So it would have been the 19th in the morning. So like flu and COVID and all these like seasonal diseases are all rampant. And they are all, from what I can tell, already very understaffed and very overworked. I remember seeing this one room in the ER that had people in hazmat suits. Like, that's how bad it was. They had a sign on the door that said, "Do not enter without a hazmat suit." But I do the CAT scan, I do the x-ray, I don't even remember, a whole bunch of other shit. And I meet with a bunch of doctors and all this stuff, and they, I guess, have like a morning meeting. And finally I meet with this doctor who's like the head honcho. I guess he was a cardiologist consult or something like that. Been doing it for like 50 something years. He is knowledgeable from what I could gather. And he finally tells me, "So you don't have a hiatal hernia. You don't have any kind of hernia. There's nothing wrong with your stomach. So from what we can tell from the scans, you actually have," he actually tells me two different things. He says you have a cardiac tamponade or a pericardial effusion. But basically what that means is that I have fluid around my heart in my heart sac that is compressing and strangling my heart and is essentially killing me. Then he tells me one of the scariest things I've ever heard in my life. He says, "If you hadn't come in here, we are talking hours to days." And I even tell him that like this all started like 2 years ago. And he like doesn't believe me. He thinks that it must have been something else and that this is recent and that it's maybe, he said it was one of two causes they were looking for. That it was either just a random heart virus or an autoimmune disorder. And then he also tells me something that's really weird. And he mentions that he thinks that I might have Cushing's disease, or what was the other one? I remember him mentioning it and I said it multiple times and he said it multiple times. Like I told my mom, he told my mom, and then we looked into it and it's like the exact opposite of Cushing's disease. Oh, it was Addison's disease. That's what it was. So Cushing's disease causes like drastic weight gain and like can lead to an autoimmune disease. It's basically an overproduction of cortisol, and it can also cause hypertension, which they also found out I had from all these tests. Now I'm taking like a bunch of different medications for it. But like every single symptom, like thinning of hair, red cheeks, called it a buffalo hump. It's basically when your back kind of goes like this, bruising easily, pendulous abdomen, purple striae. Is basically like purple stretch marks. Apparently they're not usually purple. I also remember him mentioning that I had stretch marks on a weird part of my body that's not very common. I can't remember where it was. I think it was my back or something. Oh yeah, he also mentioned that I had a moon face, which is like a clear indicator of Cushing's disease, and I was like, all right, man. That feels like an unnecessary insult. But yeah, basically I have every single symptom of Cushing's disease, and they want me to collect 24 hours of my piss in order to test for it, which I did, and I sent it off to test, and they tested my cortisol, and I had a cortisol level of 82, which, if you don't know, apparently the normal amount of cortisol to have is between 3.5 and 45 micrograms. I have a level of 82, which is almost double the max amount of normal. They still need to run a few more tests, but they are pretty sure that I have it. And it's caused by either two things. It's either like a tumor on your pituitary gland or a tumor on your adrenal glands. Not a cancerous tumor, just a tumor. There's even a diagram of a person with Cushing's syndrome, and he literally looks exactly like me. It's actually like pretty uncanny. But believe it or not, that is actually kind of a positive to this entire story, because if I do have Cushing's syndrome, they can simply remove the tumor, or depending on the cause, just give me medications to lower my cortisol, and then like all this shit will go away. So even though it sounds kind of weird, I'm hoping that's what it is, because I would lose weight, I would gain energy, acne would disappear, my depression would be lessened, it would help with my constant issue of having to lay in bed 2 to 3 hours to even try to fall asleep. So yeah, I'm kind of hoping, because that would be awesome if they could fix all that. But anyways, back to the main story. So they find out that my heart sac is basically filled with liquid and is killing me. So they want to get me to surgery immediately to drain that liquid. So what they would normally do is that they would put you under, or not even put you under, they would just give you anesthetic, and then they would put a needle in your chest, and then they would drain the liquid out of that for as long as it needed to. For me, I think it was 3 days. Apparently there was a lot in there. And when I saw the liquid reservoir that it was in, it was like brown yellow. It was, oh god, I don't even want to think about it. Oh fuck. It was a lot though. They had, so they tried to get through my chest. They tried to get through all this with this long ass needle while they're putting me under anesthetic. And also, the anesthetic is not supposed to put me to sleep. It's just supposed to make me not feel anything. But that didn't matter, because apparently I was so exhausted from not sleeping for like a whole week that I fell asleep asleep in the middle of it. I remember them being all around me and talking and putting an oxygen mask on my face. And I remember there was this, I can't remember what her job was. I wish I could. But I swear to God, she looked almost exactly like Karen Page from Daredevil. And I even told her that, apparently. I don't really remember that. It was when they were doing the ultrasound, and I was barely awake for it. I was off of my meds. It was bad. But I remember when this was happening, when they were putting the needle in, that I had a dream that the National Guard kicked the door in and begged them not to operate on me because they wanted to kill me. Like, I remember this entire complex dream where I was actually asleep in the dream, and then the National Guard came in with rifles and told all the doctors to stop operating because they needed me to die. I don't know why this happened. I don't know what caused this dream. I just remember it happening. I also remember they had some kind of machine that was pressing up against my nose. It was like a gigantic white square thing, and that, I guess, helped me fall asleep. And then I don't even know how much longer later they woke me up and they were like, hey, so we couldn't get the needle in because you're so fat as fuck that the needle wouldn't reach your heart sac, so we gotta do something else. We have to cut what I think they called a pericardial window. So we basically have to cut into your chest, get this long ass tube, put it right like 6 inches above your belly button or so, and then shove that tube in there and then drain that shit. And normally, if I had had all of my faculties and hadn't just been under anesthetic a couple of seconds ago, I would have been freaking the fuck out. But it's kind of lucky that I was under the influence of drugs and I was like, cool, do that. So then they tried to get me to sign these papers. I was with a bunch of other nurses that I hadn't met yet, and then they were like, oh wait, you were just under anesthetic. We legally cannot get you to sign these papers. So then they have to call my dad, who luckily was there because of what happened with my mother, and had him sign it. And then they pretty much immediately ran me off to another surgery suite, and then the rest of it just is gone. In fact, I only kind of half remember the visit to the other room. I don't remember being in the surgery suite. I don't remember them giving me drugs to knock me out. They knocked me out for this one, thank God. And then however many hours later during the surgery, or after the surgery, I wake up in an extremely uncomfortable hospital bed. And I do kind of vaguely remember them telling me before they did the surgery that after the surgery I would be in I think the second floor was what they told me, but that was all they told me. I didn't even find out until like several hours later that I was actually in the ICU under constant watch. And I only found out by accident by like overhearing a nurse in the hallway, I think. Again, a lot of it's a blur. I don't really remember. But yeah, so basically what has happened is I went to the ER expecting to just get some extra strength omeprazole or ibuprofen for this hiatal hernia that I thought I had. Found out I didn't have that. Found out that my heart was trying to murder me. Watched my mom die for a couple seconds, and then suddenly I'm in the ICU. And this is a really weird thing to associate it with, but the only thing I can think of when I hear the word ICU is the BoJack Horseman episode where he's at his mom's funeral and he's talking about her looking at him and going, I see you. And halfway through his speech realizing that she meant intensive care unit, not literally ICU. So what comes to mind when I hear the word ICU, or the acronym, I guess it's not really a word, is I think of Beatrice Horseman being in a hospital bed screaming and thrashing and dying. So that's not a great visual, but luckily that wasn't my experience in the ICU. However, what was my experience is that I was sitting in a bed for several days. I want to say 3, maybe 4 days. Again, time's a blur. I believe I was out of the hospital on the 23rd at night. Again, I don't really remember that much. And other than the ER bed, I swear to God, for these 3 or 4 days, I am laying in what I can only describe as the most uncomfortable thing I've ever laid on in my entire life. So unlike normal hospital beds, this wasn't really cushioned, or at least from normal hospital beds that I've seen in media, they're usually cushioned. This was not, this was inflated. It was like a leather rubber kind of thing, and the bed would inflate. And apparently this bed was one of the faulty beds. So right right in the middle, right where my like tailbone and ass is, this bed would just very randomly deflate. So while I'm laying in bed, like in a lot of pain, they have to keep giving me morphine because of the pain and all these other drugs that I don't really remember. I remember Tylenol, and then they finally gave me my antidepressants and Zyrtec, but they couldn't give me mine. They had to get their own. And my antidepressants are like a relatively rare kind of medication and very expensive. So that was a whole ordeal as well. So for like the first day that I was finally awake, it was an awful, horrible day because my antidepressant withdrawal symptoms are just horrible. Like you're not even supposed to go off of it for a day, but that's not here or there. So yeah, all this shit has happened. Everything is just bad. The bed is uncomfortable. My mom finally gets out of the hospital, I think on the second, maybe third day that I was there, and she's just like completely fine. Again, to this day, they still don't know what happened, what caused her to just die for a couple seconds. So during this entire stay, I have a tube that is running from right here or so, running all the way up into my heart sac, and it's draining the fluid. But every time I would sneeze, cough, move a centimeter, try to sit up in the bed, breathe, anything at all, it hurt because I have like a this thick, this long or so tube that's running from here to here. And for my last day there was the only day that I didn't have that tube in my chest the entire day. I remember them taking it out in the morning and it felt so fucking weird. I remember them telling me breathe in, breathe out, big breath in, and then she yanked it out. Well, she didn't yank, she didn't like Beyblade it. Let it rip. Like a fucking lawnmower. But I remember the feeling, and this is gonna sound so weird, but so does all of this. It felt like farting out of a hole that you have never farted out of before. It even made farting noises. And so I now have to live with that for the rest of my life. You get to think about that. I get to live with it for the rest of my life. So now I'm out of the hospital, obviously. Luckily, I had my parents to keep me company for a lot of it. I had the support of people like my best friend Courtney, my buddy from Down Under, Ayo Jack. Watching him stream during some of that actually helped quite a bit. I had a few nurses that were just so amazing the entire time. Some of them that weren't great. I especially had this one nurse that was just so amazing the entire time. Her name was Lori. I wish I could give her more of a shout out, and I don't want to dox her or anything, but I wish I could give her some kind of nomination or prize. I really wish I knew her last name or anything else about her, but she was just so good, so helpful. She helped me even mentally during the entire thing. She fought for me to get a new bed, which I eventually did. It didn't help that much, but you know, she tried at least. We need more nurses like her. She's just an amazing person. But anyways, I'm out of the hospital. I'm doing a lot better. I do still have, okay, a little bit of a trigger warning. I do still have the scar, obviously. It's only been a month. So for any of you sicko medical freaks that like to look at this shit, here's your prize. There you go. There's the scar right there. Also got this little scar from where they put the tube in. It's not a great look at it, but you know, it's there. It'll be there for the rest of my life. Probably or hopefully not as red, but hey, what can you do? I needed it done. They did it. But anyway, this is like the third time I've said this, but I'm doing all right. I'm doing a lot better. Things are generally looking up. I'm probably going to go back to the gym tonight, actually. I also, week 2 from healing after heart surgery, had a fucking cold. So I've been dealing with that, but I think it's finally over. I think everything's all right now. I've been doing things that I normally do. I went and saw Avatar 3. It was, it certainly was an Avatar movie. No, it's not bad. It's just like, it just redid a lot of the same exact shit that the last one did. Like, it nearly beat for beat just recreated, like, seriously, so much of it. It's really hard to get into because it's just, it was a good movie. It's a good movie. It's even a good Avatar movie, but it could have been a lot better. I see where they were going for a lot of it, but again, they did do a couple new things. I'm like the new Na'vi people that they showed, the fire people, are really cool. It's a cool, interesting concept. And their leader lady, whose name I can't remember, I think it starts with a V. Varang, that's what her name is. Please light me on fire. But anyway, yeah, that's about it. That's all I really got. And I hope you found this story entertaining. It certainly, I wouldn't say it was entertaining for me. It sucked. But as always, fellas and ladies, I hope I made you laugh. I hope I made you smile. And I will see you when I do this again. Oh God, actually, I hope I don't ever have to do this again. I don't ever want to go back in the hospital bed. Good God. I'll see you when I make a video again. Bye.